The ancient Greeks believed that pomegranates sprang from the blood of Dionysus, the god of wine, but pomegranates also are connected to Persephone, who, upon eating it, was sent to the underworld by Pluto for 1/3 of the year, only to return in the coming of spring. So pomegranates have a rich mythological history, but also a delicious fruit tree to grow at home and surprisingly easy. So come along with me in my 4th year of growing pomegranates as I unveil all the secrets to growing these juicy orbs of goodness. Straight out of the gate with pomegranates, you want a sunny location. 6 to 8 hours of sun is ideal. Of course, yes, as per always here at Epic Gardening, I'm growing them in the perfect climate, Mediterranean climate here in San Diego, California. But you can grow these in zones 8 to 11 if it's the varieties I have here, which are Wonderful and Parfianca. But we actually offer a variety that grows in zones 6 to 9. So that covers a good, healthy chunk of the USA. It's called the Cold Hardy Red pomegranate. It's on our site. We'll ship it right to your door if you can't find it at a local nursery. Good airflow. They do not want humidity. These are really used to high temperatures. I'm talking 85 degrees Fahrenheit or higher for over 120 days of the year. They can handle that. It's not mandatory, but they can absolutely handle it. In our area, we do not get anywhere near those temps for over 120 days. I'm still getting a ton of juicy palms off of these. So varieties, there are quite a few actually, but there's about 3 or 4 that you want to pay attention to. If you want the most classic variety of all time, that's going to be the Wonderful variety, which is behind me here. That's the one that is heavily grown in California. It's the one that you probably see in all the pomegranate juices that are out there, or just those little trays that you might get at a fancy grocery store full of pomegranates that cost $1 million. Why? When you can just grow it yourself. The next one I have is Parfianca. It's another great variety. It's a little bit more sweet. It's a little bit less tart. Besides that, I haven't noticed a ton of difference. Obviously there's a size difference, but that could be for other factors. Obviously there's also the Cold Hardy palm that I mentioned, which if you are in zones 6, 7, up to 9, you pretty much have to buy that one because you won't get a harvest otherwise. They like to ripen in the fall. It's probably pretty cold in your area in those zones in the fall. So to max that harvest out, you can grow it in containers and then bring it into a protected area in the fall. But we'll get into that a little bit later when it comes to harvesting time. Now, the only other one worth mentioning is Eversweet. Stain-free variety, very sweet. I'm pretty happy with my Wonderful and Parfianca. These went in the ground 3, 4 years ago. Let's talk now about how I got them in the ground and why I planted them where I did. When you get it in the ground, you do not have to do anything fancy. We made a whole video on how to plant a fruit tree to set it up for good growth. You could follow that, or you could dig it out and just plop it in your native soil and you'd be good. The only thing I'd say is it doesn't like wet feet. Think about it. If it can survive and thrive in 85 degrees Fahrenheit for 4 months out of the year, what does that imply about its care below the soil? That means that it's probably not going to want to be drenched in water all the time. At the start of its care, twice a week until it's established, maybe that's the first year, year and a half. After that, you can move to weekly, throw a bunch of mulch on top, and you're pretty much good to go. So fertilizer-wise, to be honest, guys, you could get away with just not doing it. But if you want to max out the yields, when it comes to late winter, early spring, the tree will be bare and you can access sort of that core of the tree where a lot of those roots and feeder roots are. Throw your 10-10-10 all-purpose sort of fruit tree fertilizer down. You do not have to go heavy on the nitrogen like maybe I would with my citrus orchard right behind me. It just doesn't need it as much. It'll really prioritize vegetative growth when, of course, we want a nice bushy structure. We don't need the tree to be absolutely massive. A lot of the fruit you're gonna see is coming on that outer periphery of the tree and coming lower on the tree. I mean, look, this one branch here has 5. So there's just so many hanging down low. You don't have to go crazy on the vertical height. When it comes to pests, palms get hit by pretty much the same types of things that most fruit trees do. Your mealybugs, your scale, your aphids, things like that. Now, when you look at this tree, it's quite resilient, you know, unless it's really early on in its life. If I got some aphids right here, or some mealybugs right here, and it's not just taking over the whole tree, I'm not really that worried about it. I'm gonna cut that off, maybe do a little pruning and shaping, and I'm moving on. I'm not doing a ton of spraying. The only thing I would say is early on, if it starts to really infest, I would take decisive action, but as the trees mature, it's not as big a deal. The hardest part about palm care for most people is figuring out how the heck to prune these things because they don't grow like a normal fruit tree. They don't have one main trunk that you have a really easy time spotting, and then you can sort of shape the rest of the tree, much like the peach tree behind me, which wants this kind of open vase style container structure, palms do as well, but there's a couple things that you want to do and you can do any time of the year. When you're growing in a backyard or front yard, in my case, but you're growing at home, you don't need these massive trees. Whether it's a palm or any other tree, what I like doing, and I recommend a lot, is taking these heading cuts. Bring that vertical height down. You can do that pretty much any time of the year because the palm wants to fruit on that lower half of the tree, on the extremities off of new wood, and I don't want it throwing a palm out way up there and then drooping the whole tree over. So I'm gonna come through with my pruning shears. This one, even though there's leaves on the tree, I'm not stressed about it. I'm about 6 foot, 6'4", so you can tell there's quite a bit of height on top of me. I'm taking it down to stuff I can reach. Another good pruning tip as you're bringing that height down, notice how on any palm branch, first of all, wear gloves most of the time. These things are spiky as heck. But what you wanna do is, you'll notice that you have 2 offshoots coming out this way, and then it goes 2 offshoots this way, this. So it alternates basically, and you can cut right above one of those, and that's gonna tell you where it's going the next season. So in this case, let's say I wanted this height to come down to about here, but I wanted it to push out this way, I'd be cutting above this one right here. So now take a look. I'm gonna see more growth coming out this way next season instead of coming out this way and then directly into the plant, which we don't necessarily want because we want that open structure. So look how different this tree looks. First of all, aesthetically, it's more pleasing. It's a little bit more bulbous in its shape. It's not as disheveled, but I did want to show you, if you look in here, you can see where I cut last year and you can see the pattern of growth that happens afterwards. It wants to throw a lot of stems out, and those are the stems that I just cut back. So I think a lot of people, when they prune their fruit trees, they get a little scared, like, what if I do this? What if I do that? Unless you make some huge error, which is very difficult to do in fruit tree pruning, the tree will adapt. And in the case of this pomegranate, it looks better than ever. Now, this is taking vertical height down. There's a lot to do because this is a deciduous fruit tree, meaning all the leaves fall off. Once the leaves fall off, late winter, early spring, you can really get into the mix here and figure out how to optimize the internal structure of the pomegranate. So because it's not that time of year right now, I'll put a diagram up so you can see what it should look like. But basically, pomegranates are gonna have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 stems coming out of the ground. You do not want anywhere more than about 6 or so. I think 4 or 5 is a really good idea. So once the leaves fall off, you'll see a kind of cluster of stems or trunks coming out of the ground. Isolate to the best 3 or 4. What I mean by that is, if you see one that's kind of coming from one side of the tree and then going through and around and twisting, and you've got 7 stems, just take that one out. Take a little pruning saw, cut that one out. Of course, dead, diseased, damaged branches, the 3 Ds of pruning, you always take those out. And then what I would try to do is a lot of stuff that's crossing back in, I would be taking that out, because what you want is you want as much light hitting as many leaves as possible to ripen up and produce as much fruit as possible, meaning you need to take out some of these so that more light gets into that center of that tree. You'll see a crazy amount of pomegranates. And speaking of, how do you know when you're supposed to harvest them? Congratulations, you've gotten to the harvest stage. Let's figure out how to harvest them appropriately. I'm gonna give you the easiest tip first. If it is split open and it is not being eaten up by bugs or rotting in any way, harvest it. It's ready to go. In fact, some growers wait until their pomegranates split in order to harvest. And the reason why is because the arils inside, those are the things that you're eating, they swell up with water and juice, and that's what forces that split. But it's also what gives you another signal as to when to harvest your pomegranates if they're not split open. So take a look at this little guy here, very cute little pomegranate. What you can see here is it's not perfectly spherical. Most people, if you said, hey, draw a pomegranate, you draw a circle or a sphere, and when they're perfectly ripe, the aril pressure, sort of the swelling of those arils inside, actually forces it to look a little bit more angular or have these ridges like this. You can also look and see if there's some curling in at the end here. That's how you know it's ready to harvest. You can scrape at the skin if you want. If it kind of comes off a little bit, it's a little bit softer. Another good sign, you can see some of that happening there. And then clip it, and it's time to show you the best way to open them. All right, you've got your palm. The hardest thing about palms though, you see all these videos on the internet, oh, how do you open it? How do you open it? There's honestly a lot of different ways. The way I found to be the easiest, if you've harvested it at its ripest point, is locate those ridges that I was talking about, take a paring knife and score the very apex of that ridge. So you come in like this and just come down like that and go across and just do that to every single ridge. So what you then wanna do is I'll just try to, you know what, I'll cut this top off too. Let's just cut this guy. What you've hopefully done here is isolated the pomegranate to its sections perfectly so that you don't have to do any sort of weird digging around to get all of these arrows out, or what most people call the seeds. Now, why do I have a bowl of water? It's actually because the arrows or the seeds will basically sink. You can see them dropping into the water now. And if I drop a little bit of the pith in, it's not a big deal because it will float. And so then you just go through section by section and do this. And by the time you get to the end, you have only pomegranate seeds at the bottom. So you might think this process takes a while. In a way, it's really enjoyable. I mean, savor this. It's taken you years probably to get to the point of harvesting these pomegranates, but it doesn't take that long. I made this pretty killer pomegranate cake a couple days ago with 4 huge pomegranates from my garden. It looked beautiful, tasted amazing, and it only took me about 10 minutes to deconstruct the pom and get all these seeds out. So the cleanup is really easy too. What you need to do is just kind of scrape the top, and all the floating stuff is really easy to dispose of. In fact, you could just throw it right in the garden. It's not a big deal. And then pour this off and you'll be left with a bunch of absolutely beautiful pomegranate delicious jewels. Let's have a little taste. It's so hard to describe how satisfying it is to grow something like this yourself. So if you want to, hopefully this guide helped. We've got more fruit tree care guides over here. We have a ton of trees, like hundreds of trees. We will ship right to your door from Epic Gardening. And I hope you enjoy pomegranates, guys. One of the more satisfying fruits I've ever grown in my life. Good luck in the garden and keep on growing.